That made me realize that number one, it's not about energy healing, it's about emotions. And two, you have to want to forgive. You have to desire to heal. You have to want to feel. It's a choice that you make. It can't be forced. It has to come from the heart. So it doesn't matter what you do, like the energy cleanses and the sage and the techniques, nothing will work unless you truly desire to. And so you don't actually need any of that. You just a sincere desire, and you need to be willing to feel.
Melany Oliver, it's such a pleasure to have you today. I am really excited to really go deep into your world of intuitive coaching and just to get to share with many of the viewers some of these concepts that I think you speak so eloquently to in many of your blog posts, and just really getting to share the depth of information that you have and the wisdom that you have with the viewers. So thank you so much for spending this time with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Nice. So just to help out with the concept of intuitive coaching, can you help the viewer understand what that is?
Sure. Basically, I work, well, as the word says, intuitively. Sometimes when clients come to me with certain issues, I can pick up or I can sense or see that it's not actually the issue, it's something else. And basically, I have to trust my intuition to guide them to have that realization or insight and to work with what's coming up for me as I'm engaging with them. I can share some examples. Well, I can share one example at least. I remember like a few years ago, I had two clients, and this was interesting because they both came with similar issue. They both were blocked in terms of jobs, and they couldn't find jobs. And they said they wanted to release whatever block there was to finding a job. And one of them had been 2 years, and the other one had been 6 months. And he had 6 months, and he had a family and all that. And he was obviously stressed out. And what was interesting in both cases was that they both had lost a parent. You know, for the man it was her, and for the lady it was her father. And and intuitively, what I picked up is that they had so much grief that they had suppressed. Their soul could not move forwards without first dealing with that grief. And I said to them both, look, I'm sorry. I know that you want to, release, your blocks to finding a job, but I feel it's more important. It was just screaming at me. We need to first work on accepting the loss of your father, of your mother, and we need to allow you to grieve and go through that process of acceptance, right? And so I worked with both of them to, accept the passing of their father. And what was interesting with the lady, 2 weeks later, she got a job and signed it, signed the contract. And with the man, I think it was a month later, he found a job and signed the contract. But in both cases, they were just blocked. And they thought they had a block to money or work here, but actually their soul was saying, no, you need to heal this. You need to grieve. You need to do this work. And they just couldn't connect the dots. So sometimes what you see the problem, what you see as the issue is actually not the issue. So I have to really trust what I see and my intuition and go with that, basically.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So why do you think it is that if we haven't grieved, or if there's some sort of soul component, why do you think it's blocking us in terms of moving forward in other areas of our lives? So for example, these two people were unable to move forward occupationally because they haven't grieved. I'm very curious from your perspective if you can see why one translates to the other.
Well, in both cases, I will say that it had been years. In the lady's case, it was 2 years that her father had passed. And in the man's case, it was 10 years. It was a long for you to be holding that and not even cry, not even let it out. And for me, the only, there was no, the specific reason was it was just their soul wasn't able to continue living their life until they addressed that issue. that's the way I see it. I don't know how else to explain it, or I don't want to overcomplicate it. It was just that their soul couldn't. And also, no, emotions weigh you down. It's a weight on you. And I know because I've had a similar experience, but more so with hearts and holding on to grief and not being able to open my heart to, friendships. But it like I felt the heaviness of that emotion and that hurt. After 2 years of unable to heal that, I couldn't physically move forwards until I released that. I think it's just the mechanism of the soul, maybe.
Uh, Your website has, or the blog portion of your website has so much wisdom and great information. And something that I love about your work is that you're really able to meet a lot of people where they're at. So you simplify information that might seem a little convoluted or, a little spiritual, or even there's a lot of Western psychology that I see in your work, but you're able to bring it down to a level that I think is really approachable and digestible for many people who are not operating in those paradigms, in those worlds. And what I recognize is, despite there being a lot of kind of Western concepts in terms of psychology in your work, you have a very unique and spiritual background. I would say one that might even surpass many people that I meet in the spiritual community. And so it's really fascinating to see you have one foot in both worlds and walk so balanced. And I was wondering if you could share with the viewers a little bit about your past, your history in the spiritual world.
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of the spirituality part came from my upbringing. So I'm from Bahia in Brazil. It's very occult. There's a lot of rituals. And from a young age, my grandmother used to take me to see witch doctors. And I used to get my energy cleansed. And my grandmother used to do that as well with plants. And then you'd have to do these rituals with baths and all this kind of stuff. I used to go see psychic mediums. And you'd have like a psychic surgery to release entities and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it was normal. I know this may sound crazy to some people, but yeah, I grew up with it. So it was ingrained in me. And so when I started healing, I actually thought that was healing. So when I started my spiritual journey, I was quite young, I was 14. That's where I looked. I looked into, and that's when, I mean, we're going to go into the new age stuff now. Well, that's when I got into all the new age stuff because that's what I was taught. So I thought that that was healing. It wasn't until later that I started to look into what you call Western psychology and all of that. And then obviously the two sort of blended together. So the spiritual was very much like the foundation. And then the psychology part came after.
And you speak a lot to pseudo spirituality and materialization of spirituality. And that's something that I've really appreciated of your work, being somebody who's balanced, who has one foot in both worlds. And also, you have a presence. I believe you have a podcast as well. Is that right?
I don't anymore. I did a while ago. I'm actually thinking to
Yeah.
restart now that you mentioned it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Being in that world, having presence in YouTube and speaking to spirituality and having a background in the occult and spirituality, and then also having a foot in the Western approach to psychology, I think it's really not only interesting, but chock full of a lot of great wisdom. Much of the information that you're putting out there in terms of pseudo spirituality and the messiness that we're seeing, all the noise that we're seeing in terms of spirituality and healing and energy healing. And I was just wondering if you'd speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say this because I was in it. This is not to judge. This is I got lost in it. And like I said, it came from my upbringing. And so that's what I was seeking. And then after 10 years of being in this new age spirituality, doing energy healing after energy healing after energy healing, and then all this other stuff, nothing worked. I wasn't healed. I wasn't healing. And actually, I felt more lost than when I started. And then I just thought, maybe I'll never heal. And it was just crazy making. And this is why I talk about it, because I wasted my time, I wasted my money, and I felt more lost. And, now that I'm out of it, looking back, it does look crazy to those who are not, on the path, trying to search for truth here, there, and everywhere. And yeah, I felt like there was always something missing from these new age techniques, and it never really healed me. It was, and then you needed more chakra cleansing, you needed more sage, and you needed more this and more that. It was just like, when is this going to end? Where am I going to? And for me, mainly it was depression and suicidal ideation. Those are my two things that I struggled with the most for like years. And it just never ended. And then I just felt completely, yeah, lost. And like there was no hope. Like, I'm never going to heal, and I'm just going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. Okay, so what was coming up for me is like when I was speaking about, the wound that after 2 years I couldn't, like I was betrayed by three friends, and for 2 years I just could not forgive them. And I could feel the emotion of it like weighing on me. And it was just like this darkness looming over me. And I knew that. I knew that I just couldn't forgive. I felt so betrayed and hurt, but I was feeling maybe jealous and all this kind of, hard emotions. And I just got to a point where I prayed. And this is my point to finding the truth about emotions. I just set out a prayer from my heart, a sincere prayer. And I said, God, and at that time, interestingly enough, I thought God was the universe. I was more connected more with my guides. That's another story, but I said, "God, I don't think I have it in me to forgive them." It's making me cry, but I said, "Help me, because I know I need to forgive them and I want to forgive them." And I was so strong and sincere. And then I let it go that day and I went about my day and I forgot about it. I forgot the prayer that I said. And then the next day, I just couldn't stop crying. I was crying and crying. And for 3 weeks, I was just like crying. And I didn't understand what was happening because I forgot the prayer that I said. And then 3 weeks later, I connected in with my guides and I asked, why am I crying? What's happening? And then I heard, you asked for this.
Oh,
And then in that moment, it just clicked. And I thought, holy moly, I prayed this. And then that was the moment that I realized the power of my heart and the power of our prayers. And it has to be sincere and it has to be from the heart. And I asked God to help me release this wound, to help me forgive them. And I was grieving all the hurt that they caused, the pain and all this stuff. And it was from that moment on that I switched to doing things more from the heart space, from doing prayer. And then I realized also, obviously, that moment and also working with clients, the power of emotions. Because when around that time or just before, I was also practicing Reiki. I don't practice Reiki anymore, believe in it. I do believe in energy. We can explain, I can explain that later. But what I was noticing in my Reiki clients is that some clients were healing and some clients were not healing. And I was trying to figure out, why are these clients healing and these clients are not healing? Like, I want to understand. And what I figured out was two things. One, the clients that were healing, they were having massive emotional releases and breakthroughs. And so then it made me think, so there's something here about emotions. It's not just energy, it's about emotions and emotional release. And the clients were not healing, they would suppress emotions and sometimes in the session and then come back 4 months later with the same pattern. remember another thing. I was doing a Reiki session, and this lady wanted to open her heart. And when I got to her heart, I saw an image of her brother. And I said to her, "You need to forgive your brother." And I was trying to bring up the emotions because you could feel the emotions come up, and she would push it back down. And I would bring it up, and she would push it back down. And I said, "Are you fighting me?" And she laughed, and I just looked at her, I said, "You need to forgive your brother." And she looked at me and said, "I will never forgive him." And at that moment, it was another moment of, wow. And then I realized healing is a choice.
Yes. Yes.
And with all these realizations, working with clients, having my own experiences, putting everything to put
Mm,
pieces, puzzles, together.
mhm.
Um, yeah, that made me realize that number one, it's not about energy healing. It's about emotions. And two, you have to want to forgive. You have to desire to heal. You have to want to feel. It's a choice that you make. It can't be forced. It has to come from the heart. So it doesn't matter what you do, like the energy cleanses and the sage and the techniques, nothing will work unless you truly desire to. And so you don't actually need any of that. You just a sincere desire, and you need to be willing to feel. That's
Yeah.
it.
So my question for you is, you made a statement that it's not energy, it's emotions, but what we recognize is that emotions is energy. So
Yes.
these emotions are energy. And then also as a Reiki healer, and I think you were like, were you a master?
Yeah, I did, the master and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Yeah.
That as a master Reiki healer, that you were intuitively able to be receptive to the energy that was happening within the bodies of these individuals.
Yeah, correct.
And that you were also able to recognize their own resistance to
Yes.
their own healing. So ultimately, you echo a sentiment that I am very vocal about, which is you are your own healer, that those around you, whether it's coaching, Reiki, meditation teachers, gurus, whoever it is around you, these people are merely support, but you are the creator of your own experience. And you are your own healer. You are your own doctor. You are your own guru. And so what I'm hearing is that you're very much echoing this, that those people who recognized that their healing is in their own hands used your intuitive work and the energy work of you being a Reiki master to support them in moving through their own healing. But then there was those clients that were not healing because they were anchored in their own resistance of processing the energy of the emotions that were coming up.
Yeah, 100%. That's spot on. Yeah, and also, the thing that I would add is, like, the clients that were not healing, they just wanted a little Band-Aid, a quick fix. They needed more energy healing, to or, 2 things. One, they thought they needed more energy healing, and second, well, 3 things, they wanted to dump their emotions on me. They didn't want responsibility for the healing, and they, yeah, were becoming codependent on this little Band-Aid. So every 4 months they would come for, a session, and I was trying to figure out, uh, why they weren't healing. But once I did, then I stopped that, and that's when I switched to, emotional healing. I said, "No, no more. I'm not doing that. We need to do emotional work." And them didn't come back, I'll tell you that.
So I'm very curious if you saw that there were some results that the Reiki in tandem with the emotional processing of the energy associated with the emotions and even the belief systems, right? Why is it that you no longer believe in energy healing now?
Well, because it's, healing is a choice, number 1, and it comes from your own will. Yeah, you don't actually need to do the energy healing. It feels good. Also, a lot of people use it to just dissociate, to do nothing, to just sit there and think that's healing. But no, the real work, as you know, is feeling and the emotions and going through that. And yeah, a number of things. One, I don't want people to be codependent on me. I want to empower people. I want to teach people how to use the power of their own heart to heal. They need me. Once they learn that, they can do their own. Eventually they can do their own. I understand that it's helpful to have guides and therapists. Of course, we all need help at some point. But essentially, I want to empower my clients, not to keep them codependent on me.
I'm popping in with a gentle reminder of how transcendental work can support you in becoming a conscious architect of your personal reality. Many of us move through life feeling stuck, hopeless, unfulfilled, or even resentful, trapped in a reality that feels handed to us rather than consciously created. Transcendental work helps identify and shift energetic patterns rooted in limiting beliefs, conditioned mindsets, and inherited perspectives of reality that keep us from fully embracing life's possibilities. Through isolating patterns, false and limiting beliefs, and the elaborate stories that come with such programming, then we start to dismantle and regain access to aspects of ourselves that have been frozen in time or long forgotten. This work includes inner exploration, mindset and pattern recognition, intergenerational healing, and transformative modalities that reshape not only our external experiences, but also our perception of ourselves, freeing us from subconscious traps designed for self-protection, yet keeping us stuck. You are far more powerful than you realize, and you came into this life for a reason. And as a transcendental coach, my role is to guide you back home to yourself, help you identify your purpose, align with your path, and manifest the life you truly desire. And if this sounds too good to be true, consider that doubt may just be another subconscious mechanism keeping you limited. So if you're ready to explore how this work can support you, book a free discovery call, and together we'll uncover where you're at, where you want to be, and how to start building the life that you were meant to live, truly becoming an architect of your reality. So thank you, and may you recognize the powerful creator you are. Enjoy the remainder of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very much the motto of my practice. And I tell it to my clients often is that I'm only here to support you until you get to the point where you surpass me.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to recommend somebody who might take you to the next level at that point. And I can only assist you to the point that I've done my own work, which
Yes. Exactly.
continue to do my own inner work at such an intense level, doing some stuff that doing some levels of work that has been commented by those who know me that, they can't believe that I would delve that deep in that way. And for me, I don't even recognize that it seems that intense and that deep because it's a calling. It's not a pre-planned act. It's a calling. It's a nudge inside. And I have two timelines, right? I can continue to just be where I'm at and continue to replicate the behaviors of where I'm at based on the mindset of where I'm at. Or I can go deeper into the wounds and I can start to rework. And it's reworking myself, my own belief systems, processing, feeling these emotions that are coming up. And a lot of people don't know how to feel, to process the emotions because we weren't taught as children.
Oh,
We had parents who were deflecting and who were resistant, and we didn't have parents who could attune and show us how to sit in those and feel those. And I believe for a child, it's innate to sit and feel, but then
mhm.
based on our environment, we watch how to disassociate, distract from it.
and suppress it.
Yeah.
You know, how often we're told, don't cry, big boys don't cry, big girls don't cry. And we're taught to suppress.
I'll give you something to cry about. That is some of the most toxic shit. And as we do the work, I am just like, holy hell, I can't believe that there was a nation. There was a nation of people who believed that was parenting. There was also a nation of people who believed that the cry it out method. We actually had a doctor telling us that our children were better left to cry it out. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
the most unbelievable shit. And we were so distracted or so moved away from our inner voice. And I circle back to the same inner voice that keeps telling me to go deeper in my own work so that I can truly be a voice to those who are really wanting to go deep. Because these people are pattern interrupts on this planet. We came at a really beautiful time that I believe there's a collective evolution and ultimately an energetic revolt or a consciousness revolt where we're moving away from this very toxic old paradigm and we're starting to evolve and move into a higher state of consciousness. And so there's going to be a lot of pushback. And
Yeah.
a lot of that is done, these pattern interrupts and those participating in this evolution are people who are learning to process, sit in their emotions, go deep, rework, recognize that they are the creators and architects of their own realities. And that is where the higher consciousness stems from. And I know that in your work, you teach people how to anchor in, process those emotions, and sit in those emotions. And I'm really
That's ex-
wondering what comes up for you when I speak to that.
well, lots of things were coming up. One, when you were mentioning it's a calling, it just brought me back to the two clients that were so unaware and disconnected. That was their soul calling, but they just didn't know. They couldn't connect. So I was just there to say, I know you want to heal this block, but let's focus on this first. And with just focusing on that, the block released itself. But I understand the soul calling that you were saying because I have the same. I can't help it. I cannot help but want to go deep and do the work. And I'm obsessed. Maybe some people think I'm a bit too obsessed, but it's that. I don't know. To me, it's the most important thing, and I guess it was, I wanted to heal more than I wanted to stay the same. So
Yes.
I will do anything.
Yes.
If it means going through a dark night of the soul, going through my black holes, as I used to call it, that's
Yeah.
what it takes, and that's what it takes. I'll do it. But yeah, going
Can I
back to
ask
what you
you
said,
the why? So you just said, because I needed to heal more than I wanted to stay the same. And I want to point out that your why was so significant and so powerful and so charged. And for a lot of clients, their why, they're missing their whys.
right?
And I
Um,
recognize your why.
yeah, because living with suicidal ideation is no joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every day, thinking about death all the time, about your own death and how much you hate yourself and depression and at the time nobody understood it. Everybody just dismissed it and you thought you have everything to be happy. You have a roof over your head, you have food on the table, you have a family. Why are you depressed and suicidal? Like nobody understood. And I just couldn't live. I just didn't want to live like that. I didn't want to live with depression and suicidal ideation. And I just believed in my heart that there was a cure. Like, it's just possible that we're here and I'm going to have to live with depression and suicidal ideation for the rest of my life. I just couldn't believe that. I said, I just knew a cure or solution, but I just haven't found it yet. And so I was constantly on this search. Sorry, I'm going
And
off
what did you
topic.
find? No, it's okay. And what did you find?
That there is obviously a cure and a solution. Well, firstly, that it's through emotions. And secondly, this now goes into the Western psychology that you were talking about, that actually all the hatred and the suicidal ideation and the depression was because of childhood traumas. That all the new age healing was not, all the chakra cleansing and all that kind of stuff wasn't doing it. I dealt with childhood trauma of being abused physically, mentally, emotionally, narcissistically abused. So no wonder. And I had a lot of rage,
Mhm.
because there's a suppression of rage, right?
Yes. Yes.
Rage, like rage about the injustice of the abuse that I experienced, and nobody defended me, nobody protected me, and everybody supported the abuser and sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I found is firstly it's a choice, it's emotions and childhood trauma, which is why I bang on about it all the time, is where the core of all our patterns lie.
So as you sat in those emotions and you recognized that you were suppressing, because depression is suppression, right? So if we look at the cause and effect, the ebb and flow, what I'm recognizing and hearing is that as you excavated those emotions and brought yourself into what it is that you were suppressing and allowed them to come up, that the depression and the suicidal ideation began to subside.
Yeah. Yes. And then and then it went to, a few months, or a month or so, and then 2 months, and then 3 months. And I was like, oh my God, I'm, I'm feeling better. I'm healing. And then that's when it came up again that actually I can heal. It is possible to heal, basically. Yeah. And all the other symptoms, the self-hatred, I'm still on the journey, of course, but yeah, the more that I healed, the more that I processed emotions, particular from my childhood, the better that I felt. And as a consequence of my healing, before as well, especially throughout my teens and even my 20s till mid to late 20s, I smoked, I drank, I took loads of drugs, and to get away from these feelings, I was self-destructive, basically. Well, the more that I healed, I noticed that, I didn't wanna take drugs anymore. My desire to be healthy, I didn't want I'd stopped smoking naturally. It wasn't because I tried to stop so many times and it just didn't work, and so I said to myself, "You know what? I am just gonna focus on my healing, and as a consequence, that when the time's right, it'll stop," and it happened like that. I lost the desire to drink. I don't drink. It's been over 10 years. It's gonna be 11 years now in January. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, I started to naturally love myself a little bit more. I didn't wanna self-sabotage, anymore. It was a of the healing. It was a natural consequence. It wasn't forced. Uh, just a side effect of doing the real inner work.
This is so beautiful. So what I'm hearing is that as a form of suppression, because there might be many people watching this who are very curious, like, how do I know if I'm suppressing? And how do I know if I'm depressed? And what I want to articulate is that it is natural to go into times of depression, right? If we think about what depression is, it's a coming energetic coming down and going up. So there's natural ebb and flows. We're not always on a high. We're not always neutral, which would be lovely if we were. And a lot of the work is being able to come to a place of homeostasis and neutral and not be at the whim of our emotions, of these ups and downs and highs and lows, the reactivity of it, or even the impulsivity of emotions, right? And so we do go through these natural highs and lows. But when we sit in a depression for a very long period of time, it takes a toll on us. And then what I'm hearing is you started to express your depression through suicidal ideation because you really wanted out of this depression. And so I was wondering if you could talk to or articulate what suppression looked like for you and for others that you've worked with, and how to really truly identify depression.
Yeah, so now that you mentioned it, one thing for me is that because my mother was very rageful, she was just pure rage. my biggest fear was becoming like my mother. That's like my worst nightmare. And so what happened, well, that, and also the fact that I was not allowed to, even like when I was beaten and all of that, I wasn't allowed to express it. I wasn't even allowed to cry about it. She'd put sandals on us, and that whole thing. I'll give you something to cry about. So we'd have to take the beating and not cry. And obviously that's a lot of anger and injustice that was stuck there. But also, as I was healing, because I also didn't want to be like my mother, I didn't allow myself to express the rage. But I wasn't aware that I was doing it at the time. Okay. And so what was happening was, not only was I suppressing it, I would cry. So I was crying my rage and I was crying my anger, but you can't cry anger. So I would rather feel depressed and crying all the time than actually express my rage and release it. And because I didn't know that back then. So I was replacing the rage with crying and depression until I realized that that was actually not helping me heal. I was crying, the victim cry, I call it, even though I didn't know what was happening at the time, until I realized, obviously, I had a lot of, once I started doing inner child work and all that kind of stuff, that I had a lot of rage. And, I had to express it, because you can't, obviously in a safe place and all of that, because you can't process your rage and anger through crying. That's you escaping for it. 'Cause I didn't want to be that, that's my shadow, I guess, or
Yeah.
I didn't want to be my mother. I can't ever
Yeah.
express rage like, but
Yeah.
then it was making me depressed. And then I was watching her, and there's so many elements, and parts to, but yeah, it was a long process. It wasn't just overnight. I'll tell you that.
No.
There was a lot of inner work and realizations along the way. But one of the things so I get a lot of clients, obviously, that come to me with what I call high functioning depression. They actually don't label themselves as depressed. Come to me saying, I have everything. I have a happy life. I travel the world. I live a healthy life. I have a good job. I'm successful. I'm financially, stable, but I'm sad all the time for no reason. That, to me, like, alarm bells go off now, because I have just hundreds of clients I've worked with, that exact same phrase. And all they say to me is, I just want to be happy. I have everything. I have everything, everything. I'm just not happy. And that is a classic, indication of, like, you have a lot of suppressed emotional traumas from your childhood that you haven't processed, that, is still in you. And it doesn't have on the outside, it doesn't resolve on the inside. You have to do the inner work in order to heal, that you can eventually be happy and release, this depression.
What I recognize and what's coming up for me, and I know as a coach who has done a significant amount of inner work and is still doing inner work, I attract individuals who are a little bit behind me on my path. So it's almost like a natural teacher who attracts the students regarding the specific type of information that this teacher has acquired wisdom on. And there's something greater to be said for the teacher who has not just acquired wisdom through text. It's not intellectual, it's actually lived. And
Yes.
the universe sends us individuals who wants to do the work and move through and transition in the way that we have. And I've noticed through many of your clients that you've attracted individuals that want to heal their depression and want to
Yeah.
learn to sit in their emotions and process and feel them so that they can transcend them and move past them.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I also hear that for suppression, so you were suppressing using drugs to numb disassociate and distract, right? Alcohol. But
Reiki as
you,
well, like energy healing. I dissociated through that as well.
Mhm.
Meditation.
So
I
spiritual
meditated so
bypassing.
much, and then
Mm.
nothing was, I wasn't healed.
Now, I've heard this actually from quite a few people. And something that I want to say is to those who maybe a little alarm went off and go, well, wait, am I using meditation to spiritually bypass? Am I using Reiki to spiritually bypass? And something I feel called to speak to, which is discernment. Discernment allows you to move through these spiritual domains and to recognize, am I using this modality or am I using this technique in an honorable way that serves me? Or am I using it to disassociate or distract? We can use water to disassociate and distract. Like we can use the most healthiest of things for us and make it harmful because that is the abusive nature, right? And that's where self-sabotage is a form of abuse that we're projecting inward upon ourselves. So for those who it comes up that you question, am I using these modalities or techniques to spiritually bypass? I believe that's a very healthy question to ask yourself, but please use discernment. And discernment would say in this conversation, she is not saying that meditation and Reiki are a distraction, that it can be used as so. And what I'm hearing is that when you allowed yourself to become angry and to express your anger is when you were able to start moving through those emotions.
Yeah, yeah, and really go for it, not just a little bit, but really, yeah, and not judge myself for it because, like I
Yes.
said, I didn't want to be like my mother. I had to fully allow myself and love myself through it. What I expect justice.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just had to feel it.
That brings something else up for me, which is something that I've been speaking to quite a bit with many clients, is the difference between discernment and judgment. And I heard you just say, allow myself to feel this without judgment and to express it without judgment. And which is an area we're about to segue into, is pseudo spirituality. Um, I have seen on YouTube and through Instagram people within the spiritual domain, which is like top spiritual, say that discernment is not spiritual, that
Really?
discernment is the same as judgment. Yes.
Never heard that.
Everything, girl,
No?
there's all kinds of attacks on different like YouTube is a gauntlet of crazy when it comes to spirituality, some of the things that I'm seeing. And I don't
I
allow
love
myself to spend much time on there. I get in, I drop my stuff and I get out. And I came across something where discernment was a form of judgment. And that's something that I feel called to speak to, especially in this conversation as it's come up,
I
that
I just
discernment, yeah, it's a full body no. That
yeah,
the only one who is telling you not to practice discernment is
that's
somebody
absurd.
that wants to take advantage of you. Because when you don't have discernment, that means you're gullible. That means that you don't make decisions for yourself. It means that you don't recognize when your body says, this doesn't feel good and I don't want to lean into this, that something feels off. Discernment
Yeah.
and intuition go hand in hand. Intuition comes up and says something, and the discernment says, I'm going to honor this and I'm going to move away from this.
Yeah.
Judgment is attaching to what it is that you're seeing, and where your attention goes, your energy flows. And so when we look at someone's behavior and we judge it, if we look at somebody's clothes and we judge it, if we look at somebody's unhealthy behaviors and we judge it, we then attach to it energetically. which means that we're merging and taking a piece of this in, and we're participating in this now. Whereas discernment is recognizing that's not for me, and I'm going to move away from it. I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to spend time with it. I'm not going to sit in it. I'm simply going to recognize that my body wants to move away from this. And discernment is empowerment. And anyone who is telling you not to practice discernment is wanting to foster an environment of gullibility and, I believe, victimization.
Yeah. And will manipulate you, will
Yeah.
abuse you, essentially. I loved how you described that about the discernment and the judgment. I just want to add that when you judge an emotion, you cannot process it.
No,
You can't.
it is the resistance that's keeping it internal.
Correct. And with discernment, like when you desire to perceive, when you desire to know the truth, to see the truth, and when you're really passionate about the truth, you will have discernment. Yeah. So a lot of the times when I really desired, to know the truth, to have sides, you will start to see things, to see through facades, to see through. So I do believe that discernment is your desire also to face reality, even if it's not tangible, because people speak things, but their intention, as you know, and their motives are not aligned with what they say. And yeah, to discern, you have to want to know the truth. You have to face reality, and you have to desire truth. And when you have that, you will be able to discern.
Mhm. Yeah,
of course.
what comes up for me is radical acceptance. So radical discernment means radically accepting the perspective of reality that you have at this particular time. And discernment also, for me, the more that I started to do my own work and started to cultivate self-love, which is something you can cultivate, which is something that you can participate in, that you can build and grow. It's already innate, it's already there, but many of us self-abandon, suppress for the sake of acquiring it outside of ourselves. And I know that the more that I started to cultivate and to really foster an environment for self-love, it was done through discernment. Discernment allowed me to say no and to feel like it was okay to say no because I recognized that this particular thing wasn't right for me. I wasn't going to judge it. I wasn't going to say, well, these are all the reasons it's not right for me. And these are all the reasons I'm not going to say no. I stopped playing the game of chess and I just started moving, just moving like water and seeing myself like water. And the water sees that there's an obstruction and the water just goes around it and makes no judgment of it.
Wow.
And
Nice.
so with judgment, we attach to it. We can't move around it with grace. And I love what
Yeah.
you said about not attaching or not judging emotions. No emotion is bad. No emotion is
No.
wrong. It's how you act it out that can be to your detriment or painful to others, which when we judge our emotions and we suppress our emotions, then we become the hurt that they're hurting others.
Yeah. And then you act it out. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter what you say, it's inevitable. And it can be so subtle sometimes, and you don't see it, or the longer that you suppress it, one day it will just come out. It's just inevitable. Well, yeah, that's why this work also is so essential. It has to be I started saying to people, this is a lifestyle. This is not just you do one session, 15-minute session a week or every once a month. No, this is every day. This is every day you're gonna do this is a practice, a daily practice. It's a lifestyle, and that is it.
I love what you just said because mindfulness and doing the inner work really is a lifestyle. Many of my clients, I can tell the ones who show up, who are receptive and do the work while we're in session together, because I can feel the ones who want me to answer for them. And so being held as an ICF coach means that I let the client do the work and I support the client in doing the work. And I can feel when a lot of the clients are coming to the session and they want me to do the work for them. And I
Yeah.
recognize that they're not seeing it as a lifestyle and as a way of being, as a new state of being, as a new state of consciousness, but rather showing up for that quick fix, right? And there's a dopamine hit that comes from being in a coaching session because you're being mirrored, you're being validated, you're being, you're having a lot of your reality reflected back to you. So you're feeling seen at a high level. And so there's some chemical compounds that come from that feel good, that feel empowering. And so there are people who can become addicted to just feeling that and not really showing up to do the work.
Some get it, some still don't, but there's nothing really that you can do. But yeah, I understand, what you're saying. There is that too. You can't get away from people who just don't want to take responsibility for doing the work. And yeah, it's like I said, it's a way of life. It's a state of, you said, what did you say? State of being?
Yeah, a state
Or
of consciousness, a state of being.
or
Yeah, a state of
like
consciousness.
you have to cultivate
Yeah.
that conscious. I don't know if it was like for you, but for me, it was obviously I started this when I was young, but it's just in me. Like
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
want to do the work, and you're like, I see that you're the same. Like it's a calling, like you said,
Yeah.
you can't help it. I
Mhm.
can't help it, but want to
Mhm.
do this work. Some people, they don't seem to
Mhm.
have that. They want to
And
take to understand that it has to come from within them.
yeah.
That's also switched. I don't do any new agey stuff. It's more, coaching and then getting them to do the inner work. And sometimes when it needs to come up, then obviously sometimes I'll sit there with clients that once it really hits their heart and let's say a big, deep emotional wound comes up and they start grieving, then obviously we'll just sit there.
That's the shadow aspect of doing the inner work, and something that you speak to quite a bit about in your work. And, I think have even produced some blogs in terms of shadow.
Yeah, I have. I have, yeah. And I try to do that. And you said, I write it in a way that is, easy to grasp, just because I want everybody to understand and not to overcomplicate it and try not to too much, psychology words like big theories and things like that. But yeah, and it's just what I see. I write about obviously my experience and what I see, and hoping that this helps someone or helps people when they read it, and so that they can become aware of the pattern in themselves, or maybe with people and even healers that I've seen as well.
Mhm. How can people recognize their shadows? That is, and when I say that, I catch myself and I'm like, God, that is the $1 million question, right? And that's the power of having a coach and having a therapist, is that they help you, they reflect back to you and mirror back to you so that you can better see it. But for those who don't have a coach or a therapist or some sort of support, how could they on their own recognize their own shadows?
So I did a lot of shadow work back in the day, the Debbie Ford and all that kind of stuff. But what I realized over the last, year or so is that actually the easiest way to recognize your shadow is when you're not being truthful, when you're being honest, when you're omitting certain parts of the truth, when you're in a facade, when you're pretending, when you're faking. It doesn't have to, we don't have to overcomplicate it. Let's just focus on truth. And if you're not being truthful, and if you're not being honest, and if you're omitting certain things, so that perceived in a certain way.
Yeah,
That's your
I
show.
love this. Yeah, the little white lie. So there is no such thing as the little white lie. That is, you're uncomfortable with expressing the truth, and maybe because you're fearful of this person's reactivity. Or there's
Exactly.
the people pleaser who wants to just be nice to everyone and is afraid that this person's feelings are going to get hurt. It's
Yes.
not your job to protect another person's feelings. It
Yeah.
is your job to be truthful and kind. You can be
Yeah.
kind and truthful. And kindness doesn't mean changing the truth to protect another person's emotions. It means coming from a heartfelt place and allowing this person to know how you truly feel, coming from a place of kindness and heartfelt and sincerity and compassion. So you can tell people that they've got spinach in their teeth with kindness and compassion. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that discomfort is really your own. And I mock it by using something very trivial and small. And we do know, it gets larger. But when you catch yourself in a place where you're trying to protect another person's emotions, there's a shadow. Why? Why are you trying to do that? What are you fearful of?
Not yes, because often it's fear, right? Fear of, like you said, there fear of the consequences, but also when you're trying to protect your facade, your face, how people will perceive
Fear
you.
of how you're being seen and perceived. Yeah.
That's really it.
So that's
That's the
control and manipulation. I want to manipulate people to perceive me a specific way because
yes.
if they see me any other way, I won't be loved, or I won't be accepted, or I won't be
Judge
wanted.
me.
Yeah, they're going to judge me. They're not going to like who I really am. So that means sit with that. Look inward at that. Who is it that you really are that you recognize won't be accepted?
Yes. And I want to add to a point that you said earlier. You have to expect when you're truthful, when you're really raw and I just did a live today on IG about this. People are gonna hate you. Obviously, people who are on the path will get it, and you can work through it. But not everybody's on the path, as we know, and especially not most of us, our families and friends from childhood are not on this path. And when you start being really truthful with people that you were used to people please, the people that you used to, be codependent with or feed their addictions, emotional addictions, they're gonna turn on you and they will hate you for speaking the truth and changing, and they will switch up on you.
Mhm. Yeah, what I recognize you're saying is you become a trigger. And so even if the more honest you are and the more that you sit in your light and the more that you sit in your truth and the more loving that you are for yourself, the more compassion you have for yourself and the less judgment, the more discernment, and again, moving away from judgment, you will trigger those who are being called to love themselves more, self abandon less, to move away from judgment and sit in discernment. If you're not judging others and you're hanging out with people who are very judgmental, you will trigger the shit out of these individuals. And that is not a bad thing. How they project that onto you is up to them and is reflective of their state of consciousness. So if they project hatred, which to me that is a huge word, the H word, like it's huge. There's a lot of low density, painful vibration to that feels to me suffocating and really heavy. If someone is projecting that onto you, discernment says, I don't want to feel this from this person. And this person lacks the self awareness to recognize what they're putting onto me because I'm triggering them, because they recognize that judgment is not the way. It's not a place of kindness and compassion. So it is not your job as the mirror to protect the emotions of the person who's being triggered, because that is their own healing work. And what you're doing is you're taking their healing, you're taking that away from them.
Yes.
And that's
And
their
by
job.
speaking,
That's their work.
yeah, and by speaking the truth, you're actually giving them an opportunity to heal. You're actually being loving to them, even though they may not see it this way. They will hate you for it for the rest of your life, maybe. But you need to understand, like, if you do the work, you know that actually you're being loving. You're especially if you do it with kindness. Of course, you speak your truth, hatred, just with love and kindness, like you said before. And you have to know that in your heart. And once you've done the work, you know it in your heart, so that you don't take on their projections, like you said. Yeah, it's a tough path, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a tough path, but I can say for me personally, it's far more freeing than the way that I was living. And so you had mentioned something, you said that, you've been called to do the inner work from a very young age. And I would say that I started doing the inner work very young. I didn't realize that I was doing the inner work, but at a very young age, I would say probably around 8 or 9, I started carrying, a lot of people would journal, and I started carrying a journal around, but I wrote freestyle poetry and shorts, and they were all my ability to go inward and to recognize what I was feeling, what I was processing, even recognizing the shadows of my caretakers and those around me, because I was in a very tumultuous and high energy and very chaotic upbringing. And it was my only way of staying grounded within myself and staying within my own reality, because there was a lot of gaslighting and a lot of toxicity. And I started my inner work at a very young age to allow me mindfulness, to allow me compassion despite my surroundings. And it was what allowed me not to become a person operating from depression and suicidal ideation despite having complex PTSD up into my late 20s. And it was my outlet. And so doing the inner work was something that I did at a very young age. And then I ended up at the age of 18 I ended up moving to Europe and then moving eventually to New York. And in that time period, I stopped the mindfulness practices, I stopped the journaling, I stopped the shadow work, all of that, which was innate because I was no longer in my environment. So I thought I didn't have to do it anymore. It was my way of protecting myself then. And what I did do in hindsight is that I immersed myself into a very materialistic way of being, a very superficial. And it was though so much of my early life was in a spiritual space, and that now I was exploring what material was, because now I was free, right? I didn't have the same responsibilities that forced me into a very mature place from a very young age. Now I felt like I could be a kid and make up for that lost childhood. And I leaned very material and superficial. And and I, in hindsight, recognized that I needed to do that in order to have an understanding of the diverse worlds. And then I ended up having a spiritual awakening with a dark night of the soul, which re-immersed me back into my innate knowing of mindfulness and self-awareness and going deeper into the spiritual practices. And what I can say from my perspective is living a version of yourself, despite how much you trigger those around you, is such a state of calm and grounding and reassurance, because you're living your truth.
Yes. Oh, I just got goosebumps.
You're living your truth. You no longer are making yourself small or collapsing because of fear of how the other perceives you, wants you, accepts you. You don't need accepted by anyone when you accept yourself. When you love yourself, you don't give a shit who you're triggering, who breaks up with you, who doesn't want to be with you, because you know that you are in alignment with your soul frequency. And
Absolutely.
goddamn, that's empowering. It's empowering.
And
And
so
I will never
also,
go back to that. No.
I just did a live today, and exactly I said this: the truth is the sword that I die on, and it doesn't matter what they say because I know the truth. They can gaslight me till the cows come home. It doesn't matter anymore, and that's why it's so important to do the inner work so that you can have discernment to see when you're being gaslit, when someone's dismissing you, when it's someone disrespecting you, when someone is covertly shaming you, and all kind of or even subtle signs. It doesn't ask friends, partners, family. Yeah, it doesn't matter when you're in
It
your
is
truth.
subtle.
What?
Yeah.
It's so subtle, but people
Yeah.
don't want to see it. Like you don't want to see it because it's your family, because it's your, partner, because it's your friends from like school or whatever. But once you start to grow, and obviously your perception of things and your sensitivity, I mean, will start to increase as well. And the simple disrespect is like, I can't take it anymore. It's like
No. When you do the
happening.
inner work, you don't take it anymore. When you do the inner work, there's a confidence in your experience because now it's tangible. It used to be it's so subtle. It was a nudge, a feeling of,
Like, what's going on?
and then you quickly move past it because you're like,
Yeah,
if I don't sit in it and acknowledge it, then we can pretend like it didn't happen. And so you quickly move past it, and then you'll even give that person 3, 4, 5 times of doing it
Lord.
over and over, and then you don't express yourself, and then eventually you blow your top, and then you're seen as like an unhinged, highly emotional, irrational, illogical being, right?
They're
Yeah.
easy. Yeah.
And I see this a lot with people in the spiritual community who they don't want to be confrontational because they feel confrontation is low vibration. So what they'll do is when somebody does something that's subtle that doesn't feel good, they don't have the skill set yet to articulate it. So they'll go meditate on it or go, do whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah.
They'll spiritually bypass the scenario. And then it
But
keeps
not dealing with the
happening.
issue.
No, not dealing with the issue. So it keeps happening, keep
Yeah.
happening. And then the person finally blows up and explodes because you can only take that so many times and suppress it for so long before it becomes explosive. And so they explode. And then the people around them go, oh, well, look how spiritual you are. Like, maybe this is a
Yes.
person that's really delving into Buddhism and meditation and mindfulness. And they're going
Love
to
feeling that
don't get
spiritual
helping
card.
us. Yes, yes. Then the attacker will say, well, look how spiritual you are, which is abusive. It's a very toxic, manipulative thing to say, but we hear this a lot. So then this person sits in shame and is like feeling shame that they exploded in the way that they did, but also is internalizing what that person just said to them and is seeing themselves as a fraud, and then will give up the path or start to and say, well, I haven't earned this path. Like, I'm not good enough to be on this path. And that's the dynamic that I see a lot. And so
All the
I
time. I see all the
see
time.
programming. Yeah.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
have as well.
Yes.
I
Yes.
haven't.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And what I like for if this is you, if this is, a viewer, if this is you, something that you resonate with that's happening, what I'd like to remind you is that you're still human. Give yourself grace. On doing the inner work and on the journey, on the path, is not instantaneous. It's not an Amazon next day delivery. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It takes time to deprogram and unlearn those behaviors. And you are worthy of the spiritual practice. You are worthy of moving into whatever mindfulness practice calls you. And it takes time to cultivate. And it takes time to get to the place of loving yourself so much that you catch that subtleness and you don't feel like it's confrontational to meet that person with compassion and say, hey, I just want to sit in this for a minute. You just said this thing, and this is what came up for me. And I was wondering if I could understand where this is coming from and maybe what you meant by that. Or if I'm understanding this correctly, can I mirror this back to you? Can I reflect this back? And really understand where that person's coming from. And if it's still not feeling in alignment, there's absolutely nothing wrong. And it's full discernment to say, this doesn't feel right for me. This relationship doesn't feel right. And I'm not going to be in a relationship where there's this level of toxicity and hurt.
And this, what you just said, when you confront people like that, and it's not a confrontation in terms of harshness, it's just like, hey, like you said, I'm feeling this, or
Accountability.
what, it's accountability. Yeah. That is where the gaslighting begins. That is where they will switch up on you. That's when they will attack you. And this is where the crazy making happens. If you're not really anchored in your truth, and if you don't know who you are, and if you've not done enough of your inner work, you'll buy into that. And then you stay in these cycles. Once you've done enough of your inner work and you see, and we've been talking about discernment throughout, which I love. When you have that discernment, when you see the truth, you're like, not happening. You're not gonna gaslight me here. I know my truth. You can evade accountability, you can do whatever, but is the sword that I die on, as I say.
Yeah, I find myself when I'm in those situations, which I used not to be in those situations as often, but I've changed my environment a little and moved back into a scenario where the people that I'm spending a lot of time with, I'm not at the same frequency. And there's very different communication styles, and they haven't done the inner work. And so the language in the conversation is not as seamless. There's a lot of resistance and pushback. And when you're with other people who haven't done the inner work, they're not willing to take accountability. They're not willing because the ego is so fragile and it feels attacked just by you existing. And that's
Yes.
something I want to bring up. You said a minute ago,
Yes.
they will attack you. And something that I want that came up for me is when you do the inner work and the truth, even though their behavior is expressing and they're projecting aggression and malice and really a lot of like low vibrational energy onto you, you're able to recognize no one can attack me, that this person, like I am sovereign, right? The only person that can attack me is me, that this person, their ego is so fragile that they're having a temper tantrum. They're literally throwing and screaming, which is a projection of energy of their emotions that are unregulated. It's chaos, right? And having discernment is being able to hold space, ultimately preserving yourself in that environment and still having the mental flexibility to say, is there some truth in what they're saying?
Yeah.
Because if it's immediate resistance, now you're protecting your ego. But when you've done the work, you
Yeah.
can hold yourself in that space and say, is there some truth to what they're saying? And if it's a full body, I've explored it and I'm sorry, but these character assassinations and attacks on me, I'm using discernment here and I don't feel they're appropriate. If there's a behavior of mine, if there's something I've done you'd like me to take accountability for, I'm totally happy to discuss it. But when this person is literally projecting their own unhealed traumas on you, when you're in discernment, you feel it, you know it, and you can hold space, not to say you condone it, but it means that you're not judging and you're moving away.
Yeah, I love what you just said, and two things came up for me. One, an experience that I just had. Actually, two experiences. One of them is when you've done your inner work. li- We've all experienced when someone is angry at us, and we feel it. We feel that heaviness, and you take it on. But I remember this one situation where I had done a lot of my inner work, and this person was so rage. I've never seen rage like this in my life of me just setting a boundary and speaking a truth. That was my crime. And I actually felt, because I had done my inner work for that, I felt the rage literally bounce off me. It did not touch me because I was in truth, I was in love, I was here, I had done the inner work. Their rage f- physically did not touch me. And it was so visceral, the experience. It made me believe even more in the power of doing the work and, processing emotions, which I can speak about it. Like, I really believe this with my whole heart. Like, this just doesn't matter what anyone says. That was one. And the second experience, which you just mentioned about, standing in your truth, but also, is there some truth to what they're saying?
Yes.
Yes. Beginning 6, 7, 8 months ago, 8 months ago now, I don't know. I had an experience where I literally was being gaslit by at least 4 or 5 people all at the same time. And when that happens, I thought, there's something funny going on here.
Mhm,
What there's something that's off about this
mhm,
situation. Intuition, I just felt it in my bones, when you just
mhm,
know.
mhm.
It's not possible that all these people who don't know each other but are connected all at the same time attacking me. What have I done? Anyway, so I took what they said to heart. And I did my inner work. I said, "Is there some truth?" I actually asked this question, and I did, some repentance work, looked at my own faults and what they were saying and all of that. But there was still something that was just it didn't sit with me, it just was not right. And after I did the repentance work and I, shadow work, took ownership of my side of whatever was happening, which was all of a sudden out of the blue, I prayed. And I said, God, I know these people are gaslighting me. I just don't have proof. I feel it in my bone. I just know it. It's just too odd. I said, I just want the truth. I don't care what they've done behind my back. I just know the truth. And I kid you not, God is so good. And because I was sincere, and by the way, when I said this prayer, I was actually in a church. I was just invited to go to church just randomly from a friend out of the blue. So I went with her, and I did this while I was at church. And as I left, I felt something lift off me, and it didn't matter whether I got the truth or not. I'm making this because I want to point, which was, firstly, I knew in my heart. I felt it. I didn't have proof, but I knew it, and I prayed. I said, "Show me the truth. If not, I wasn't attached to the result." And I think because of it, I believe actually, because of it, 12 hours later, I got physical proof. And as soon as I got the proof of what was happening, I showed it to all these people and they ran away.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
not one of them had the courage to face me when I found the truth.
Oh, wow. Wow. And so all of these individuals were conspiring together?
Like gang stalking, I don't know if you've heard that term. Yeah, there was I don't wanna get into the details
Yeah.
of it, but there was, a big thing going on. They were conspiring together, all lying to me, gaslighting me, deceiving me, manipulating me, and I'm thinking, "What is going on here?" I just knew. How is this when you have that feeling, 12 hours later, I got physical proof of everything, of everyone. I saw all of their facades, and it was just, uh was amazing. It was just glorious. I was like, "Wow, thank God," because I know there would have been a part of me that would have blamed myself for still sort of questioning, but because I took ownership and I did the work like you said. Maybe she has, maybe that there's something there to what she said. Let me do my shadow work as well, and maybe there's something, and I did do that, honestly, and that is why I think I also found, the truth. And yeah, long story short, but yeah, it's important to your inner work, to have discernment and to reflect back also, if it's not, if there's things that you need to take ownership as well.
Yeah. And I really love that big part of this conversation has been centered around discernment, because what I recognize is in that moment, if you didn't have discernment, that you would have caved in or collapsed or not have been able to really sit in your truth and to know your truth and to know your body's response, because your body knows the
Yes,
truth
exactly.
kinetically. Yeah, kinetically. And when you become somatically aware of your body, then you are able to go, wait a minute, something feels off. And it's that feeling, which that's intuitive, right? That intuitive nudge of like something feels off. Like this version of reality that's being projected at me, when it's so different than your perspective of reality, no realities match. They're all different. But when there's such huge, what's the word I'm looking for? When there's such huge dissimilarities, like there's contradictions within them, then you either collapse into a place of going, well, my reality is completely off. Something's wrong with me. I must be crazy. Something's wrong with me. And what these people are saying, especially since there's more than one, must be true. And I am going to take their version of reality as the version of the objective reality. And I'm going to collapse, question myself, sit in shame, sit in blame. There's something wrong with me. Right. But when we're in a place of discernment and knowing ourselves, we recognize somatically that intuition that says something's off. When these realities are so conflicting, there's something off. Sets a version is being manipulated. There's a version being controlled in some way or another. And it's that discernment and that intuition that keeps us from being led astray.
I did go there a little bit,
Mhm.
but obviously I've done a lot of inner work as well. So you
You
know,
caught yourself.
caught myself and I prayed and asked for truth because I love the truth. I
Mhm.
want to know the truth, which is why
Yeah.
I always need it. And people
Mhm.
can't hide, maybe for a little bit, but
Yeah.
eventually I'll
Yeah.
click onto it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say that too. Like every time that I've been in a scenario where I've been intentionally manipulated and lied to, it always surfaces. Like, it always makes its way to me. And the last scenario that happened in, I told the person, truth is like air bubbles. When we speak the truth underwater in these very murky and dark spaces, truth are the air bubbles that make their way to the surface. They can never not make their way to the surface. And lo and behold, what I learned was magnificent truth. It was painful, but it was what was needed to come to surface. And what I'd like to articulate is this, what we're describing might sound somewhat mystical in a way, but it's not. It's the laws of nature, it's the laws of energy. And the more that you are able to do the inner work and truly sit with yourself, the more sensitive you become to these laws, right? But I do know that you have had some mystical experiences through your healing, your own personal healing.
It's something that I hold very sacred to me. I don't share it very often. I had two in particular. I think I definitely had two in particular that come up to me. One of them was, this was a long time ago, and I was actually being guided by a coach, and she guided me through an exercise, and it was, it just happened without me even, I wasn't expecting anything. I wasn't like, it wasn't a special day or a full moon, nothing like that. It was just an experience that I had where she just asked me some questions and I was going within. And then I touched what I felt was my soul. Like I viscerally experience touching my soul. And this sounds weird. This sounds like a bit woo woo and like, oh, come on. But when I touched my soul, I just had this feeling of, I've been looking for you my whole life. And I couldn't stop crying. And I just didn't want to move. And and she actually sensed it and she's like, do you just want to stay here? And I said, yeah, I don't want to move. So she logged off and I couldn't move for about half an hour. I didn't want to move. And I viscerally felt that I touched my soul, like I connected with myself. And yeah, and it's very hard to describe
Oh,
because obviously no one thinks that you can touch your soul.
oh,
But it was very visceral, such a powerful experience. It was just, yeah, and I couldn't stop crying because like I said, I felt like I've
mhm,
been looking for you all life, and I
mhm,
touched you. I mean, it was just,
mhm. Yeah.
yeah, it was an incredible experience.
What I'm sensing is that it was very much like a coming home, like a feeling of like, I found you, I know you, I've come home to myself, like a true all-encompassing feeling of being found.
And there's just no words to describe it. I find it hard to describe. It's, yeah, it's just, I found you. It's weird. And like I said, I cried. All I could do was cry. And I remember just not wanting to move. No, like that face forever. And that was so, yeah, after doing so many years, and by then I had done years, maybe 10 years in a work at least. So to have that experience was just very touching, very profound. And it's like, yes, I'm on the right path. I'm
Yeah,
finally going deeper. I'm really in touch with who I am, with my soul, and
yes.
having these experiences, even though like I said, I wasn't expecting anything. I wasn't searching for it. It just sort of happened, at that moment.
What do you attribute that experience to? Is there a part of you that recognizes what brought that experience up or what allowed you to come to that space?
Yeah, I think partly was some of the questions that she asked me, actually.
That's a good
We were,
coach.
yeah, very good. Actually, this was just prep work. We were just preparing. Didn't even get started on the session. And we were just doing some grounding and some presence and then she just asked me a few questions, one after the other. And then that last question, it was just like, it just hit me, and I experienced who I am on a soul level. It sounds so bizarre. That's the only way that I can describe it. But yeah, it was a series of questions that she asked, and the last one, it was just like, wow, this is me.
Do you remember the last question?
It was something to do with who or what is experiencing this moment right now.
Ah, nice.
And then
Nice.
it just got me there. Yeah, but it was a series of questions. Finally, that last one it just hit me.
I love it. And that for me brings up, how powerful coaching is. And coaching is just a technique and a tool by an individual who hopefully is very skilled at what they're doing. And in a world right now where there's only three major regulatory bodies over coaching, and there's a lot of coaches out there, there's a lot of probability and possibilities of connecting not only with coaches but also with therapists and other people in the healer domains that might not be able to hold space for you in that way. But when you find somebody who can truly match you energetically, that can hold space for you and really has the ability to mirror and reflect back to you, it is one of the most powerful modalities out there to support you in self-awareness and mindfulness. And what I can say, and I've been pretty open about it on this platform, my mystical experiences, that they always come in a moment of deep self-reflection, of truly wanting to like know myself, which surpasses the human body and the human experience. So as a soul, and having somebody that works in tandem with you at that level is, I can't even really articulate how powerful and meaningful it can be in your own expansion and opening to a greater consciousness. And I love that this happened for you in this space.
Thank you. Yeah, it was incredible and so unexpected, but also very much, appreciated. And yeah, it was profound. But I agree. It's really important because there's a lot of coaches that do mindset work. And if that's, what you want, then that's great. But these deep, soulful experiences and doing soul work, which is the heart work, you can only get that with someone who's done it. And then they can only take you there when someone has gone to those depths. Well, if someone hasn't, they can't take you there. And I was trying to explain this to someone the other day who's, he's an atheist and not really into this. And he's like, "Well, just go to anyone." I'm like, No, I don't do that. I'm very select because I'm sensitive and I can see and I know who's done the work and who hasn't. Because once you've done the work, you can feel it, right?
Yeah.
Feel the substance when
It's in
someone
your
is
energy, it's in your aura. Like it's present.
yeah, and you can feel it when someone hasn't. It's just words coming out of their mouth. And he just didn't understand. He's like, "Well, you need to be open." And I was like, "You don't get it."
We
You don't get it.
really need to be open. Ugh,
He didn't
there's a
get it. He's
recoil
not
for me there.
be open to anyone. I was like, "No, mate. No, I don't
No,
do that."
you need to trust your own intuition and judgment that you know best who's right for you. That
Yeah.
if we're gonna throw a need onto somebody. But man, gosh, I can't wait till we as a society really move away from this communication style of unsolicited advice, especially from those who are not an energetic match or with us, moving with us. Yeah. Yeah. And I've been getting that since I left Portland, Oregon and moved to Florida. And I am getting an ass load of people who want to like solicit advice. And I'm like, number one, I didn't ask for your advice. Number two, you and I are not, we're not, we're not in the same space. What makes you think what you're telling me to do is an actual vibratory match to me? Like if you want to make a suggestion of out of kindness, that's really different than like you need to or you should do this. And it's like, back off, dude. I didn't ask.
Especially if you've not done any inner work at all.
No.
You
Then
know,
who are you?
it's
Yeah. Why do you?
who are you? Yeah, to tell me I've been doing this for like 20 years.
Yeah, but it's remarkable. It's remarkable.
I'm still on the path, but I have
Yeah.
discernment.
Yeah. Yeah, my immediate response is I'm really not interested in unsolicited advice right now. I'm doing a lot of my own internal work, and my inner voice is my northern compass, and it's innate within me. I'll know exactly what I need to do and what I want to do and where to go. I really am trying to keep that clean, and what that means is not allowing other people to interject and project.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping my vessel clean. So I appreciate that you care. But I would really prefer if you kept that to yourself. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Man, boundaries are freaking great. When you feel comfortable articulating them, they are really great. I know that you are moving from the coaching arena into a more humanitarian domain. I'm very curious what this looks like for you.
It's just a desire that's been coming up. And this is where I see myself going. So I think 2025 will be the transition to that because step back from coaching. Actually, I'm coaching old clients that I'm still I'm not just going to abandon them. So I'm coaching a few clients, but I'm slowly moving, like in the future. That's what I want to do. Two things, well, three things actually. I have a bigger vision, but three things that sort of tie in together that I really want to start just giving back more. One of them is to stop animal cruelty. I'm vegan. I took vegan after my second spiritual experience 5 years ago. It's going to be 6 years in January. Um, and another one is to, well, eventually maybe own an orphanage,
Mhm,
open an orphan, but help orphans deal with
mhm.
their trauma and help them from a young age so that they
Yes.
don't experience this in their life. That's a big passion of mine that, well, it's just a vision and a desire that I have that I want to do. And the last thing that I want to somehow put all of this, together, make it work together somehow. I did share this vision with someone and said, it's just this vision keeps getting bigger. And it's people who are passing, in hospice with their, dying, their dying days with death,
Mhm,
really. And
mhm. Yeah.
with that, and again, it's all emotions.
Mhm,
Well, animal cruelty is really about love, and stopping all of that in the world. But the other two is again, it's about emotions, about trauma, it's about healing, but just to have, yeah, a different impact. I've been doing one-on-one for over 20 years, and I just feel like it's time to move on. Maybe I'll still do it, on the side or here and there, but it's not something that I want to focus on moving forwards. I want to, yeah, just do more humanitarian work, and other, obviously still in this with healing as my core, because I think that's always going to be my message, to emotions and to do the work from the heart and all of that. But that's kind of where I'm going.
And I know that for the viewers, as we're coming to an end, that you'll be offering a special gift to that particular person that leaves a very well articulated and authentic comment as to how this particular episode has supported you on your journey of doing the inner work. And I'm curious what that donation might look like.
I can offer a one-on-one session. Yeah, so whoever you pick or whoever you choose, you can just send them my details, and yeah, I can take it from there.
Beautiful. And for anyone who's watching this who isn't very familiar, this platform, this podcast is really a philanthropic experiment, where I have felt called to touch more people and support more people. And I want to do that through philanthropy. And philanthropy doesn't look one particular way. And this particular podcast is one where you have an opportunity to acquire not only one-on-one coaching sessions with many of the providers that I sit down with and myself, but also access books that are being donated and courses that are being donated and numerous other gifts that are here to support you in doing the inner work or to support a friend. So if you leave an authentic comment, under your favorite episode, you automatically enter into a raffle essentially. And I contact via commenting under your post and also on my newsletter. So if you go to my website and you apply to my newsletter, you'll also find out if you're a recipient of this gift. And it's a really beautiful way of giving back and being of service, being a greater support to those who are on this journey. And Melanie, I want to thank you for supporting those on this journey. And I do want to recognize that if it weren't for what you've gone through as a child in your childhood trauma and sitting and resolving that trauma and doing all the inner work that you've been doing for the past 20 plus years, if it weren't for those experiences, you wouldn't have the wisdom that would allow you to support people at the level that you are. And I think it's absolutely crucial when you're looking for someone to support you. If it's somebody who has tangible and innate wisdom in that particular area because they also have experience. It's not intellectual. It's not something you can get from a book. This is lived, worldly experience that translates into magnificent support. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I really, really enjoyed this heart-to-heart conversation. Yeah, I really
I know
enjoyed
that we get so much from this. So thank you for being open and vulnerable and speaking your truths and just being a beacon of light for those who might feel lost also in suicidal ideation and depression and suppressing their own voices. And maybe they haven't found discernment yet. And I hope that this episode supports you in recognizing that that is your innate divine right.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Melanie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.